grandfathers, my brothers, I lift up my voice and raise it high, telling the stories of your children's cries. For our ability to survive the onslaught of the enemy's drugs, guns, and alcohol, his prisons and his killing fields, depends directly on whether you are willing to stand up and resist the outrages that are being heaped upon us as a people and build a new society. Yes, the task is difficult. The odds are against you. But you must organize to find a way or make your own way.
Go ahead, brother.
You must change today so that tomorrow may dare to be different. And when you have fought back and regained your pride, when you have won some battles, when you are able to tell the stories of your heroism, when you can pass on to your young the tradition of struggle through examples of your having stood up for a better tomorrow, when you take control of our institutions, our media, our schools, when you maximize our economic resources towards our own benefits, when you stop making excuses, when you start standing with our mothers, when you stick it out with your families, when you start mentoring our young, when you start teaching us to be humane, then we can build a new nation of strong people. Your sons and daughters will no longer need to belong to gangs because they do belong. Our youth will no longer be seeking drugs as an escape because they would have outlets in our society to develop themselves. When you start setting the conditions for our youth to fulfill their humanities, then we will not be in despair. We will be whole, complete, and hopeful. My fathers, you must shape the vision of tomorrow. But in order for that vision to become a reality, you must rededicate yourself to a new beginning. Go back to your families. Go raise and teach your children. Go back and organize throughout this nation to bring about a better day for our people. Our enemies can destroy us one by one, but no one can stop 1 million men organized and committed. Thank you.
Okay, we are ready for this Tuesday scriptural studies. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are meeting with you every Tuesday at 7:30 Central Time. That would be 8:30 Eastern Time and 5:30 Pacific Time. This evening's study we're talking about understanding the science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. The science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. This lesson is very necessary for the day we are in, brothers and sisters, because we are witnessing the total collapse of a system with all its institutions and a reconfiguration or a rising of another system, another evolutionary step in humanity. And if we are to go into that future with our children, if our children are to survive and are to thrive, then as Yolande said at the Million Man March some 28 years ago, that we have a responsibility as men to set the standard, to develop the programs, to develop the institutions necessary for our children's lives and their thriving as well as their survival. I'm going to start the lesson this evening, and it's probably going to take 2 segments to do this, understanding the science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. I'm going to start out the lesson, and you might want to get your pencil and pen or your iPad or whatever you use to take notes to listen to this lesson, because I'm going to give you a lot of references necessary to help us to walk into the sciences behind it. See, brothers and sisters, we have never been taught the science of living. We've been given superstition, we've been given fantasy, and we've been given hocus pocus and trying to use those illusions to live, thrive, raise our families, and become a viable partner with our brothers and sisters across this nation and across this planet. I'm going to start off reading a little bit from lesson 16 from A Course in Miracles to begin this lesson. And if you haven't picked up your copy of A Course in Miracles, I want to invite you right now to pick up a copy. And I want to thank everybody, Angela, for coming in. And I hope everything is going well there in Mississippi. I know that a lot of the electricity is off in Mississippi. If you all have a question, you can come into the chat room and type your question in or comment. And I can see that, and I'll try to address it as we go along. But brothers and sisters, it should be obvious by now that the way we have been going as a people has not worked. That we are actually devolving rather than evolving as a people. And we have lost our way as a people. And the institutions that have been governing our minds have not served us to develop us as promised. I want to read from A Course in Miracles, and I'm going to read from the Bible also to start our lesson off, to set the foundation for our thinking as we approach this particular lesson regarding the science of mating, the science of reproduction, and the science of child rearing. So the idea for today in A Course in Miracles, today is the 16th of January, and it's the 16th day of the year, and therefore we have the 16th lesson of A Course in Miracles. You can either read A Course in Miracles by going to ACIM.org, and you can read your own copy. You can read the whole thing for free and study with us the daily lessons and exercises, or you can purchase your copy at Barnes and Noble or what's the name of that? Use half-price bookstores if you have one near you. The idea for today is I have no neutral thoughts. I have no neutral thoughts. The idea for today is the beginning step in dispelling the belief that your thoughts have no effect. Everything you see is the result of your thoughts. There is no exception to this fact. Thoughts are not big or little, powerful or weak. They are merely true or false. Those that are true create after their own likeness, and those that are false make theirs. There is no more self-contradictory concept than that of idle thoughts. What gives rise to the perception of an entire world can hardly be called idle. Every thought you have contributes to truth or illusion. Either it extends the truth or it multiplies illusions. You can indeed multiply nothing, but you will not extend it by doing so. Besides your recognizing that thoughts are never idle, salvation requires that you also recognize that every thought you have brings either peace or war, love or fear. A neutral result is impossible because a neutral thought is impossible. So that's lesson 16 of A Course in Miracles. That's the lesson for today. And the lesson for today requires that you understand the power of your thinking, that you understand the power of your mind, and that you pay close attention to the thoughts you hold close to your heart and how you respond to different situations and incidents that come, because every thought you have, every thought you hold contributes to either peace or war, love or fear. There are no neutral thoughts. Now, because we have been cultivated in our society to regard ourselves as bodies, we pay close attention to the body, and we take care of the body. And we even got this saying, it don't matter what you say, it's what you do. That is using the body to prove what and who you are. And we pay very little attention to the thoughts that come to our minds and how we approach life, and how important the thoughts and the thought system that's in our minds contribute to the condition that we experience and as we as a people experience. We think that someone else's thoughts are the reason that our condition is what it is. And we really don't understand the power of what is in our mind and how our mind is used to configure the physical world to look like it looks and give us the experiences that it gives us. So that's the background with, as we approach this subject, understanding the science of mating, the science of reproduction, and the science of child rearing. You just don't mate with anybody. You don't just lay with anybody. You don't just have a baby with anybody just because they are black. You don't rear a child the way your parents rear just because they did it this way. You have to actually deal with what is going on and evolve in your process of rearing your child. We're going to come back to that in a little bit, but now I want you to turn your Bibles to the book of Mark as we approach this subject. I gotta lay a foundation, and if you know how I teach, I have to lay a good, strong foundation, because some of you will get this by just understanding the foundation. Others have to have the foundation and the building on top of it, and some of you can just deal with it based on the building. But look here at Mark chapter 11 or Mark chapter 8. And we're going to start reading from Mark 8 as we approach this subject. Mark 8, verse 11, and the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. Now, these Pharisees were the preachers of Jesus' day. They were the institutional leaders of Jesus' day. And they were the ones who set the churches, the temples, the synagogues, and they had all of these different denominations, and they had all of these names. I am Baptist, I am this, I am that. and you had all of these people talking, coming from the same book, but having different doctrines, and each one of them tried to get the people to believe that their particular doctrine was the correct doctrine. So in Jesus' day, the Pharisees was one sect, or you can call it a denomination. They came to Jesus and began to question him, but the Bible says that they were tempting him. You have to understand what it means when you are being tempted, brothers and sisters, so that you can get what's really going on here. When you are being tempted, you are being drawn away from yourself and made to think that you are something other than what your Creator made you. So the Pharisees were trying to draw Jesus out from who he was. When he was in the desert, being tempted by the devil, the whole thing was to get him to be drawn away from himself. The Bible says in one place that let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God tempts no man, neither can God be tempted by any man. But every man is tempted when he is first drawn away of his own lust. That is the temptation. It is the trying to get you outside of who you are. So here in this verse of scripture, the Pharisees came to him asking him of a sign, but it was designed to tempt him, to draw him away from himself. Because Jesus had told the people that the kingdom of heaven is within you and not to look any place else for it. And so Jesus, he tired. He tired of them. And it says he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall be no sign given unto this generation. Let's deal with that. Jesus is not talking about, brothers and sisters, I know what you've been told because I was told the same thing. You think that when Jesus said that there was no, why does this generation seek a sign? He was not talking about all the people. He was talking about the preachers, the generation of preachers. It is the generation of preachers that do not believe in the Son of God, that seeks a sign as proof. And this sign that they seek is a physical sign to prove the existence that you are Son of God. But Son of God cannot be seen by an outward thing. The Son of God is an inward experience based on going into heaven, and heaven is within. You experience Son of God as a self-evident thing. But they needed an outward sign from Jesus. And Jesus says this generation, he's not talking about the people. He's talking about the preachers, the generation of preachers when their day is done. He said, why does this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say to you, there shall be no sign given to this generation. And then he left them, and entering into a ship departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. Now this situation is happening after Jesus fed the 4,000. So the disciples had forgotten to take the bread that was left after they had after they fed the 4,000. And he charged them saying, after he realized that they had forgotten, Jesus started using this situation to teach them something. I can't believe this. Jesus used this situation to teach them something. And he charged them saying, Take heed. Take heed. Listen carefully. Take heed. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. So let's deal with that. What is leaven? Leaven is a substance yeast put in bread that makes the bread rise. And when the bread rises as a result of the use of leaven in it, it's less dense, but it's thicker, you see. And leaven, bread comes in roughly two types: leavened bread and unleavened bread. When you have leavened bread or unleavened bread, the bread is thin. The crust is thin, like think of a pizza in our day. A thin crust pizza does not have yeast in it to make it rise, but a thick crust pizza will have leaven in it to make the crust rise. So he says, beware of the leaven. He says, you only need a small amount of yeast in bread to cause it to be leavened. And leavened bread, in the days of the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, God told them to eat unleavened bread. And the reason that they had to eat unleavened bread, because to leaven bread, it takes time, and they didn't have time to get their stuff together and get up out of there. So he said, eat bread or unleavened bread. And he prohibited the eating of leavened bread as a symbol to remind them the urgency to move out of the place they were in, that you don't have a lot of time to do what's necessary to be done. And so the freedom comes by recognizing the time that you happen to be in, and when you recognize the time that you are in, then you have room, time to escape. But if you don't understand the time, you will be leavening your bread because you think you got time. And so the leaven, as Jesus was telling his disciples, and he was using this situation, he says, beware of the leaven of the scribe or the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. The Pharisees represent religion. Hey, Sonia, thanks for joining us this evening. And I want to thank everybody else that's in the chat room for joining us. The Pharisees represent, in this saying of Jesus, religion. And the leaven of Herod, who, if you remember, was the one that went through killing Jesus. Beware of the leaven of Herod. Herod represents the government. So Jesus says, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Beware of the leaven of religion and beware of the leaven of government. Because the leaven has a potential to wreak havoc upon you. And so let's continue so you can see this from the mouth of Jesus. They reason among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he said to them, why are you reasoning because you have no bread? Don't you perceive not yet? Or don't you understand? Have your heart yet been hardened? See, Jesus is surprised that they don't understand what he's saying, and they don't understand the situation nor the time that they're in, even though it's right in front of them. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he said unto them, why reason you? Because you have no bread. Perceive you not, or you not understand, or have your heart yet been hardened? I'll put it in there again. Verse 18, having eyes you see not, having ears. See, it's a question. You have eyes, but you can't see. And having ears, you can't hear. He's asking them a question because whatever he's talking about is right in front of them and they're hearing it, but he's amazed that they can't see it or hear what's right in front of them. And do you not remember? Remember. Let's deal with that word remember for a moment. Remember. Anytime re is on the front of a word, or the prefix re is on the front of a word, it's telling you to go back in time to a condition that existed sometime in the past. Refund. You had money, you gave it away, and they gave it back. You were refunded. So you have the condition that was in the beginning. Renew. You were new at one time and you're new again, like you were in the past. So when he says, do you not remember, he's talking about your thoughts. And your thoughts are scattered and they're not making any sense to you because they're disjointed and they don't seem to have any connection one to another. So Jesus is amazed. And he says, do you not remember? Have your thoughts yet to connect with one another so that they make sense? Let's continue reading. Verse 19. He then gives them a clue. He says, when I broke the 5 loaves among the 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said unto him, 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said, 7. And he said unto them, how is it that you do not understand when I say, beware of the doctrine of the preachers and the doctrine of the government? Or y'all getting a lesson tonight? Y'all getting a lesson tonight? Why don't you understand? It's right in front of you. You can see it. Why don't you understand what I mean when I say beware of the leaven? And when you fed the 5,000, you took up 12 baskets after everybody got what they needed and ate. And when I fed the 4,000, you took up 7 baskets after everybody ate. Why don't you understand when I say beware of the preacher's doctrine and beware of the doctrine of the government? Why don't you understand this? It's right there in front of you. Let's continue. We're talking about the science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. So, what is... See, there was a time in European history when the scientists and the theologians were the same person. Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, they had a spirituality about them, and it was because of the development of scientific principles that they began to slowly modify theology to fit science rather than try to impose theology upon science. Now, if you're concerned about that, let me ask you, who created this universe? If God created the universe, then God had to set the principles in motion for science, and the development or the study of scientific principle is the study of God. Well, doesn't the Bible say in Romans chapter 1 around verse 19, for that which can be known of God is clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made? So now there was a time when Europeans had theologians and scientists. They were the same ones. But as scientific principles began to emerge and they developed, the theologians started to veer off in the hocus pocus, and the scientists started to veer off into materialism. As a result, you have a theology that is totally fantasy. Totally fantasy. And you have a science that's totally materialistic. They split. This is not natural to you. This split. Your doctrine is totally fantasy and hocus pocus. And your science is totally materialistic and volatile. So what is science? Science, as defined by the dictionary, is the systematic study, listen, systematic study of structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against evidence obtained. That's the first definition. The second definition is the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. So in one situation, it's talking about the natural world, the physical world as science, and the other is talking about the social world of science, the naturally developing social world of science, and that both of them are dependent upon a system of approach and obtaining evidence and dealing with it from an evidentiary standpoint. So if you can't produce evidence and you dealing in spiritual principles, but you cannot produce any evidence, be it anecdotal, and everybody have the same experience by doing the same experiment. Well, I did this and I got this. And the other guy says, I did this and I got this. The clue to that is found in the Declaration of Independence when it calls the evidence self-evidence, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. It's self-evident. That is a science. And you need an approach to it, a systematic approach to verify it. And everybody can do the experiment, and everybody, of course, I got the same situation. I got the same results. Even though it's anecdotal, it's still science. So the science of natural science is the physical world, which is in physics, in chemistry, in geology, and biology. And the social sciences are the sciences developed by humans to address the human experience and help to evolve humanity. Now, I'm talking about understanding the science of mating. If you want to mate, there is a science. There is a scientific approach to doing it. It takes time because it takes you some time to turn that mind towards the science and away from the hocus pocus. The social sciences are developed by humans to address human experiences and help evolve humanity. And these sciences come under things like nutrition, things like family structure, things like societal structure, defense and war, economics, religion and spirituality, environment, government, nation-state relationships. Those are the social sciences. I'm zeroing in on the science of family, though. But these other things are part of the science. Y'all in college today, and you in church. You got to know this. How you think you gonna live in a society and you dumb as a damn pickle? You got to be educated and taught the science of living and not go along hippity-hoppity and thinking that your life and our experiences as a people is just haphazardly done. There is a mind behind all of this. So these institutions are designed to administer these social sciences. The institutions are developed among people to develop and secure their lives, their freedoms, and their happiness. The Declaration of Independence of this country, which is the creed of this country, of the United States, even though they may not or we may not adhere to it completely as of yet, but it's still the creed of the country. And as I said earlier, it starts out, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain and unalienable rights. And that unalienable mean they can't be given to you by anybody or taken away from you by anybody. They're self-evident and they're unalienable. And the Declaration of Independence only mentioned three: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it says that among these unalienable rights, it didn't even list them all. It's up to you to discover what they are. But three of them are listed in the Declaration of Independence, and they are life, they are liberty, and they are the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, and these governments get their power from the consent of the ones who are being governed. So whatever government you got, it is the result of your thinking, and it is the result of your consent to be up under that particular governmental structure. Now, Jesus said to beware of the leaven of religion and government. We read it in the Bible. Beware. And we talked about what leaven is, what it does to it. He's telling you to beware of the leaven, because there's something about the leaven of religion and the leaven of government that is destructive to your happiness, to your pursuit of happiness, to your life, and to your liberty. And so the Declaration of Independence go on to say that to secure these rights, once you discover what they are, you develop a government that is instituted among you that will protect these rights, even though they don't need protection, but to help to have you experience them, the government. But when there's been some leaven put in the government does not protect your rights, but serve to squash them and prevent you from experiencing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So this creed that we find in the Declaration of Independence, this creed applies to any and all institutions that seek to govern people, whether it be a political government, whether it be a church, whether it be a mosque, whether it be a temple, whether it be a school, whether it be an educational system, of any institution that seeks to position itself as the governing institution over people. All institutions derive their powers from your consent. We read in the Course in Miracles the power of your thought, and your thought gives consent to the government. So whatever it looks like is what you have decided that you want to allow to rule over you. Because all institutions derive their powers from your consent. The Declaration of Independence. Now, I am talking about understanding the sciences, but I'm laying this foundation so that you can build. Oh, I'm talking about it. The Declaration of Independence goes on to say that whenever, now here's what got the Negroes shaking in their boots. This, what I'm about to read, that's in the Declaration of Independence of 1776, got the Negroes shaking in their boots. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, is your church destructive? I'm talking about the institution of religion among us. You see, there was an institution of religion among Jesus in his day. So I want you to think of it not as church over here, church over there, church over here. I want you to think about it as a body, an institution. We're going to get to the meat. We're getting to the meat of this. And I need to deal with that because that is the institution that is most influential among us as a people. And that's why I'm starting at the so-called house of God. It says the Declaration of Independence that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. I want you to understand something here, that it doesn't take into account of the form. Because it says here that when any form, communism, democracy, socialism, thisism, thatism, the otherism, it does not deal with the form and says the form, you know, well, this form is good and that form is not good. It says here that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new guards, laying its foundation on such principles. So abolish it and then institute a new form that has at its foundation principles and organize its powers in such form. Here we go with form again. As to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. This is your right. I'm dealing with the form because he said, beware of the leaven of the religion. And that's what's our governing body. And you see the young people are rebelling against it. Right in front of you, the young people are rejecting it. The form of religion that has been governing the minds of the black man and woman in America. They're revolting against it. All over the internet. And the bishop is going to take it all down with him. The whole institution. It's more than just a church. It's the institution itself. It goes on to say in the Declaration of Independence, because you are a thinking people, you are a rational people, you are a people whose heart is merciful and understanding, and you are son of God and you have the heart of God at your base. You are a prudent people. And it goes on, and here's what's going to prove you are a prudent people. It says prudence indeed will dictate that governments, I'm going to put the word churches, religion, doctrines. Prudent would indeed dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the form which way they are accustomed to. So it don't matter that you're looking at rebellion by the American people because they're tired of this multiculturalism. You are accustomed to the form, so you think we got to get together and vote to prevent Donald Trump. See, you're accustomed to the form, so even though you see the destructiveness, it doesn't matter who you vote for. You are accustomed to the form, and so you will suffer because you have not reached the threshold of pain. And so you will suffer. So prudence, you're not going to change it for light and transient reasons because, we see from experience that people will suffer as long as they can suffer. But when the threshold of pain has been reached, and this is what this next piece is saying, it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing inevitably the same object, that it's a evidence that there is a design behind what's going on. And this design is to reduce you to absolute despotism. And you know it's reducing you to absolute despotism because you see the condition. This is why Jesus was marveling. You got eyes, but you don't see the condition. You got ears. You don't hear what they're saying. You don't remember. He says that when a long train of abuses and usurpations, so this long train, each car on the train is filled with abuse. Each car on the train is filled with all kind of craziness. When a long train of abuses comes by you and in front of you, and you see that it is evidencing a plan to reduce you to despotism, it is your right and it is your duty to throw off such churches, such religions, and provide new guards for your future security. Such has been the patient sufferings of this people. We're talking about the condition of our families, and we're talking about instituting a science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. So how do we use the scientific process to examine the condition of our families, of our mating principles that we're using, and the condition, and then develop a science to get what we want, to develop new guards that oversee our families, our mating processes, our child rearing processes, our reproduction, the type of children and the level of development in our children, and how to develop them to be the best that they can be, and to set up a system so our men will have decent women and our women will have decent men, and we relate to each other in a civil manner. Because you see clearly the situation. Do you not see our condition? When a long train of abuses comes by you and you see on that train nothing but abuse, usurpations, sooner or later your logic will kick in and you will say, there is a plan behind this, and this plan has as its objective to reduce me and my children to absolute despotism. I don't give a damn because they say in Jesus' name. It's a lie if Jesus' name can't produce nothing but bitches, hoes, and pimps and niggas. It says in the Declaration of Independence, to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And then it goes on to list all the things that the government is participating in doing to undermine them and their posterity, as the Constitution says. Your posterity is your children. And so they begin to look at themselves, their current generation, their children, and their posterity as those who are to come. So if you do the same thing, look at the condition of yourself, your health, be it mental health, physical health, your position in the society. And if you do the math, you can then calculate, by continuing on this course of action, how it's going to affect your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. We got to learn how to look beyond our own lifespans, brothers and sisters. And so in the Declaration of Independence, it says to prove this, we're going to lay out the facts. So a candid world can see the facts. And then we're going to say, this is why we got to do what we got to do. Because the facts being laid before you cannot lie. They don't lie. You can see the facts. We have had years of study now and knowledge of facts concerning the African origins of civilizations. Many studies have been done and well-researched books and papers written on the subject. But when we look at the statistics, we clearly see we clearly see that this acquisition of knowledge has not served us. It hasn't served us well because we still, as a people, are moving backwards, devolving as a people. We're devolving instead of evolving as a people, moving backward. Even though we are councilmen, we are mayors, we are school board members, senators, pastors, bishops, and ministerial personnel, we have vast knowledge of Greek and Hebrew and all the trappings of a religion that was imposed on our fathers and manipulated among us. None of these things has served us in advancing our condition as a people. Somebody got to say it. And I'll be the man that says it. We have had a black president, which 90% of us voted for. But while he found the time and the strength to pass bills directly advancing gays, and bills directly advancing white women, and bills directly advancing Hispanics, and bills directly advancing the wealthy, when it came to us who bled and died to see his day, when it came to us who voted in a clip of 90% for him, we were told that he's not the black president, he's everyone's president. And so it's back to the end of the line for the pathetic and stupid Negro who seems to find strength to advance everyone's life and everyone's cause but his own. Everyone's family but his own. Everyone's lot in life but his own. And the pathetic Negro puffs his chest up and beats up on it for the world to see as he cries, "Look at me, the perpetual victim of living." And even when the black president, out of pain, expressed himself at the murder of Trayvon Martin, saying that could have been my son shot in cold blood over some Skittles, they made him apologize for it. For relating to Trayvon Martin, a young black man with Skittles, shot in cold blood, and the perpetrator is to this day walking around free with no repercussions for murdering our children. And we steady endure murder at will. And the perpetrators walk around like nothing is nothing. Made him apologize, the black president, for relating to the obvious fact that he's a black man and Trayvon Martin's a black man, and the record of constantly slaughtering the black man as the first course of action. Made him apologize for it. Do you not remember when he offered a lowly police officer for harassing a black college professor? He offended the police officer. I'm talking about the black president. He offended a police officer. Do you not remember? Ask Jesus. This police officer arrested a college professor for going into his own home on campus. And the black president was offended too. And before he thought clearly, he spoke out about the situation. They made him apologize to a police officer, the president of the United States, And so he had to sit down at the table with the police officer and with the college professor and apologize through that beer summit. You don't remember? Do you not remember? And to add insult to injury, after 8 years of the black president who did absolutely nothing for the black man, to add insult to injury, the white backlash to the first black president was Donald Trump. Indeed, the entire history of the present state of America is a history of repeated injuries, usurpations, all having in a direct object the establishment of an absolute despotism over this people, and we can no longer bury our heads in the sand. We nor our children have time to try and fix the unfixable. We must change our course of action right now. But how? Now, it's 8:30. I want you to listen next Tuesday. We're going to go into how we change it, and we'll deal with directly understanding and using the science of mating, reproduction, and child rearing. I'm Dr. Fleming, and I will see you next Tuesday. Let somebody know about this and tell them to tune in. Tuesday at 7:30.
What's really important are the simple things. The smile on your face, the joy it brings. The feeling inside takes my breath away. What you give brightens up my day. There's nothing better than love. Feel your warm embrace, your hug, your touch. Never wanna imagine life without you. There's nothing better than love. Something so magical feels unreal. A fantasy place where children live. I feel like a princess in a fairy tale. You came along and you changed my world. There's nothing better than love. Feel your warm embrace, your hug, your touch. Never wanna imagine life without you. There's nothing better than love. All the beauty Nothing better.